Skateboarding has given me the best sense of self and validation, a living beyond anything I ever imagined, a way to support a family, a way to see the world, and a way to appreciate diversity like nothing else. I got my first skateboard from my older brother, and it was a hand-me-down when I was about 10 years old. He was skating in our alleyway, and I picked up his old board, and I said, "Can I try this?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." I proceeded to go down the alley and run into the fence and get splinters in my fingers. He just let me keep that board after that. Within the first year of that, I got to go to the skate park. I saw people flying out of swimming pools and flying over bowls. I was like, I want to do that. I want to fly. I basically gave up all the other sports in my life to do that. The first time I ever got hurt, it was pretty bad. I ended up getting to the top of the pool, but hanging up on the coping and falling to the flat. That's what people told me, because I was knocked unconscious and I had knocked my front teeth out. I think that in that moment, especially as I was going to the hospital, I realized that I want to keep doing it. I don't know, I can't explain it any better. As you know, a lot of times that becomes the sign that people should quit. In that moment, I knew that I wasn't going to quit, even though it was against my maybe better judgment and in terms of my own health and safety. The Bones Brigade in the early 80s was considered the most elite skateboard team. It was curated by Stacy Peralta, who founded Hal Peralta Skateboards, and Bones was the name of their wheels. I got chosen as the youngest member when I was about 12. He saw something in my motivation that maybe I didn't even realize. I was always trying to evolve my skating. I was always trying to make it better, even when I was getting hurt along the way. I got ridiculed for my style when I was a kid, mostly because I was so small and I didn't look like I was smooth and flowing like a surfer, and that was what was considered cool at the time. I didn't have the strength or the flow to make that happen, so I just kind of created my own style. I started learning really avant-garde moves right at the coping level of the pools, and people thought that I was like a circus freak. They used to call me a circus skater because I would do tricks where I'd spin my board with my hand, or I would spin different directions with my body. It was hard because it made me this sort of outcast in an already outcast sport. Skateboarding wasn't very big, so that set me apart in the first place from, say, my schoolmates, my peers, and kids my age. And then I'm a weirdo in the skate scene, so I'm just like on this island of isolation. As I rose through the ranks of the pro circuit when I turned 14, 15, I started to see people pick up on some of the techniques and tricks I was creating. I think that was probably the most validating, is when I saw people that I read about in magazines or that I was inspired by learning my tricks. Like that was something that I never expected. By the time I was 16, I was ranked #1 in the world, and that went on for about 10 years after that. In 1992, skateboarding had taken a big dive in popularity, and my income was dropping rapidly every month because it was based on royalties. I was a consultant on a few commercials and movie sets. I had a very primitive video editing system, and so I edited videos for a few different companies, including, ironically, a video game company. My wife at the time was a manicurist, and so we would use her cash tips for food money. And so I ate a lot of Taco Bell, I ate a lot of Top Ramen, and a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I decided to start my own skate company, which seems crazy at the time, but I had already lived through 2 cycles of skating's popularity. I basically took what equity I had in my house and put it into a skateboard company and started over and became the team manager, the vice president, the marketing director, the video producer. At that point, I was just hoping for Birdhouse to be in the black. It was hard, so we were just barely scraping by. So what I hoped for was to be a self-sustaining business, and that I could provide for the skaters who also devoted their time and maybe gave up other lucrative contracts to be part of our team. When the X Games first started, it was called the Extreme Games in 1995, and it was just a random collection of fringe sports. So whatever they decided wasn't mainstream was extreme. It was weird. It was rock climbing, and it was bungee jumping, and it was eco surfing. There was skateboarding and BMX and inline skating, which they had parallels because we all skated the same type of terrain. But all the other ones were just kind of throwing whatever at the wall and see what sticks. Obviously, I was excited to do well at the inaugural X Games, but for me, in general, it was just another competition through the year, and there were so many at the time. The next year is when I realized how much more the X Games resonate to the general populace, and I started getting stopped in public around that time. getting recognized, and I used to only ever get recognized by skaters. My dad was an advocate for skating early on, so he helped to organize a sanctioning body for skate competitions in the 80s. He got cancer in the early 90s and actually passed away shortly after the first X Games. So for him to see skateboarding on ESPN was kind of his big accolade. I do remember him being very excited that there was a skate contest on ESPN and I was featured in it. He'd be blown away with what's happened since then. When the 99 X Games happened, they decided to include a best trick event, and that was more of a novelty that they had done in previous years, where after the main competition, they let skaters try whatever they want for about 20 minutes. It's chaos. Everyone's dropping in and they're trying one thing at a time. It's just everyone falling endlessly, but maybe a few people make their dream trick in that time frame, and those are the ones who get the awards. A 900 is basically a 2.5 somersault in midair. So think of it as a dive. You go off a diving board and you go 1.5 and then one more round and go in face first, basically. Through the years, I kept coming back to it and trying to get a little bit closer, and sometime around 1995 or 96, I really was chasing it and ended up getting very close, landing on the ramp on my skateboard, but leaning too far forward and falling into the bottom of the ramp, breaking my rib. And I kind of hung it up after that because I felt like I had given it my all and gotten hurt, paid the price. Then came the 99 X Games. The MC, Dave Duncan, said, "Hey, let's see that 900," because he didn't realize that I'd sort of stopped trying it. I thought, sure, why not? I don't know what else to do. I'll try a few. The intention was not to make it. It was more, here's the next stage of what I would like to do. And after about my third try, I started realizing that I had a consistent spin. The ramp was well built, probably better than anything we'd ridden prior to that. And so I could keep my speed up, and I started to spot my landing. And when you start spotting your landing, especially on a spinning trick, that's half the battle. And then when I didn't get hurt, I realized like, oh, I'm definitely doing this. And you're either gonna make this or you're gonna take me off in an ambulance. Those were the only two outcomes of that night that I was going to accept. I had no intention of winning the event or that it was going to be this big moment on ESPN or otherwise. I just wanted to make it. When I finally landed it, I kind of didn't believe it. I was riding across the ramp, and once I got to the other side and I looked up and I saw all my peers rushing to me, that's when I realized it happened. I walked into the best trick event having no intention of a 900. I know there's plenty of folklore that says otherwise, but that was absolutely the case.